I just want to go brush my hair real quick because I thought my hair was looking kind of messy. Because I bleached my hair, the hair is very delicate and it breaks really easy. So that's why the reason why my head looks like it does. That could be a whole other video on its own, which is hair care. But while we're at Tomo 2012 prep, let me talk to you about hygiene. You know, that's a great topic considering the fact is, you know, all these people who are preparing for the worst, and people are talking about making sure you have food, water, and shelter. And of course, those are certainly very important. In fact, those are the most important things, is food, air, shelter, and water. I mention air specifically because it's the one thing that we take for granted on Earth. Now, obviously, if you are using oxygen gas in bottles, you probably are much more aware of the importance of oxygen. But oxygen, of course, is a component of air. And so, obviously, for you, your preparations include having extra bottles of oxygen as well. But I'm assuming for most American people, most people in the world, that really doesn't come up to be an issue. Let's talk about the things that I think are most important priorities. Clearly, for most people, the first one is a given. However, depending on what happens, it may be a problem for a lot of people. Is oxygen or air. We need clean air to breathe. And in the case of, say, for example, Yellowstone or any other supervolcanic eruption where the air is full of very fine but very gritty dust that could potentially destroy your lungs, that would mean that the first one is not a given, which means is you don't have air, you're going to suffocate, okay, because you need air to live. The second one that's equally very, in fact, just almost as important is water. I have to assure you that there's the old saying of threes. You can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 30 days without food. Now, I know most of the preppers I see are like me. We got big bellies on us. I think many of us are inventorying food inside of our bellies because there's one stockpile that someone is not necessarily going to go out there and steal. Well, but unfortunately, we are just as much dependent on the sense of hunger as everybody else. So it's really not too much to dismiss that if you're hungry and you know it, steal your food. Okay? That's exactly what happens. And again, as I said in the last video, we're talking about the fence. If you are going up against someone else who is armed to the teeth with swords or guns or crossbows or, has a ballista or a trebuchet in their yard, you know dang well that you're probably going to find it harder to get a meal out of them. That brings a very good point, is Liz Stroud often points out. You want food that's easy to get, not necessarily one that's going to have to work really hard to get. So obviously, if you found edible foods like berries and nuts and in the forest or wooded areas, that's what you're going to go for. Things that don't take a lot of work to get are probably going to be your first choice, which also turns out to be the ones that we tend to eat of a lot of abundance. So, obviously, things that need less preparation time are probably going to be the ones you're going to go for first. But shelter is certainly important. I have seen so many people who are homeless. And they're homeless in the sense because they're landless. Okay, they have homes. It's just that the homes are, just like many, transients. They travel from place to place, they don't really have a permanent location. The homeless people I have known, the ones that have planned and have prepared for this, have got a system put together where they know they can go. They got a tent. They can go camping in the woods. They can find a place to set up for the night, and they can go there, stay there for a few nights, and move on. That's those homeless. I call them well-prepared homeless. The ill-prepared homeless, however, I feel bad for, because these are the men and women who often do not have any kind of a plan. They just basically, same example, they're purged through them out of the house, they couldn't pay the rent, so the landlord filed evictions, whatever the case may be. They're the ones who have clearly no idea what they're going to do. So, let me talk to you if you're in that category. And you happen to be watching this video, say on a computer in a homeless shelter or a soup kitchen or what have you. Get yourself a tent. Okay, minimum. Get yourself the essential camping gear you're going to need. Because if you have at least a tent and essential cookware, like a pot and some utensils to eat on, you have a chance to make it, right? In 2012, after December 21st, if things get bad enough, you will be the most likely to get to a safer location than a person who has an apartment or a home, because you have nothing to lose. Because everything you need is on you. Okay, you got your backpack, your camping gear, you probably can easily go from place to place. You're the most mobile of the group. So therefore, be thankful right now because you got that. But if you're truly down and out homeless person who doesn't even have a tent, watch Survivor Man a few times, because he shows you a couple quick ways to make a shelter which can help you stay alive. Now here in New England, we have a lot of cold winters. Now, as a North American snow queen, I often want to stress out the winter here in New England can be very fickle. Even here, I have seen winters where the weather has been really, really difficult to work with. And it's created problems for people all over the place. And so again, you need to consider where you're going to stay. Now, for those people who take medications, you guys probably may or may not have considered where you're going to get your supply. If the pharmacies are no longer in business, even if you use illegal drugs, you're probably going to run into the same problem of supply. I don't know if the dealers are going to be able to get their stash of illegals, but if they do, they're going to charge you an arm and a leg, quite potentially, literally, just for a couple ounces of crack or meth or whatever, hash, coke, marijuana, PCP. Okay, so you need to consider that your medications and or recreational drugs, you need to make sure to be able to get your supplies somewhere. If you're diabetic, or if you got a problem with your thyroid like I do, the last thing you want to do is run out of your medications. It's life-threatening. And it really is a problem. So, the problem is there's just too many things to talk about in too little time. And so I want to focus on the things that you need to consider at all times. And like I said, and they are important. 1, where you're going to sleep. 2, what you're going to eat. 3, if you take medications, how you're going to get those medications. 4, where are you going to go to? If you are transient, where are you going to go to? What's your plans for staying out of harm's way? 5, obviously you're going to need your tools for foraging and hunting, and also defense. So what kind of tools are you going to use? You're going to choose a sword, gun, knife, club. And those include clubs too, they count. Steel pipe. Whatever. Okay, so you need to consider those things. Communications is certainly important. That'd be 6. But the problem with communications is, if we have a coronal mass ejection which causes an electromagnetic pulse, there may not be no communications. Except for word of mouth and messengers. And that could be problematic too, because as anybody will tell you, even the town criers were not always accurate with the information they had. So information is certainly important. Now, my plans for here is I'm going to stay here at the Snow Green Palace because this is where it's a good location. It's a small town right next to a potable water source. I have access to firewood. I have access to live game if I decide to go that route and kill animals. I prefer a vegetarian diet, but hungry people can't be choosers, especially if the fact is it's a choice between you and a deer versus starving. You're probably going to take the deer because even though it's a little more work to kill a deer and gut it and clean it and get it ready to eat, it's still pretty much a choice. You use it. You want to choose the easiest food source. I'm sorry, I'm tired. You got to choose the easiest food source. But you know, the truth is that there is a time when you have to make decisions based on real world applications of food sources. Now, what about hygiene? Now, as I said, I bleach my hair, and my hair shows a little breakage here. Kind of short at the top. The reasons are pretty complicated. But the short and sweet is because it is very fine hair anyway, and bleaching takes a number on your head, and after a while it starts to break off, especially if you don't manage to keep up with the persnickety details of how you groom it, how you comb it, and things like that. It makes a difference. And of course, we do things subconsciously with my hair. We're doing this consciously, so you can say, "Oh, see something." We will go ahead and we will run our fingers through, and sometimes you feel fine snarlies, and then you do the stupidest thing, and sometimes you get a little rough, and that makes the hair break off. This hair is really, really fine. You can't see it in camera view, but if you look at it, it's really, really thin hair, and it will snap really easy. So, obviously, hygiene is important. Hair care is important. Certainly not the most important, but it's important. And what about the other issues of waste management? We don't really talk, I don't hear them talk too much about that on the survival videos. Look, you're going to pee, you're going to poop, okay? Let's get this straightforward. I mean, it's disgusting to think about, but you got to do it. You got to put food in. It's the waste has got to come out. So, for the guys or the gals who are used to roughing it, you probably already got this planned out. You already figured out how you're going to manage your waste. But for the city dwellers, you got a problem because depending on what kind of city you're living in, you may not have the ability to dig a latrine. But you're still going to have to poop. You still got to pee. So you still have to figure out how to do waste management. Now, on the colony, they talked about how you can flush the toilet with a bucket of water. That's great, assuming your toilets are working, because in the cities we have what they call lift pumps. These are the things that many times in the valleys of a city, the sewage treatment plant may not necessarily be in the lowest location. The designers do their best to do that, but sometimes, especially the sewer lines, if extend over the years, you have to. It might be higher than the area below, so they have to have these lift pumps to take the waste and pump it up to the higher sewage pipe, and then they can send it to the sewage treatment plant. Both the lift pump and the sewage plant depend on electrical service to work. Clearly, they run on, most of the cases, there's a generator that will kick in, a diesel generator or even a natural gas one that will continue to provide electricity so that sewage can be treated. But if things get really bad and they run out of natural gas or diesel fuel, the pumps will back up. And when they do, the poop is going to just come out of your pipes. And, especially if you're in the lowest level of the city and the guy sitting on a high hill flushes his toilet, you're going to get his poop in your bathroom. Disgusting to think of, but it does happen. Even in areas when the sewage systems are working, it can still happen. So you need to consider that. Waste management is just as important as this preparation of food. This waste disposal has to be dealt with as well. Also, garbage from all your empty MREs, wrappers, from the food containers. These waste products have to be processed as well. You have to figure out where you're going to put your garbage. I don't really see too much preparation being discussed about that. But it is important. Okay? We know, for example, some types of wrapping can be repurposed. For example, an empty tin can be used for, once it's cleaned out, can be used to hold things like, small parts like nuts, screws, coins, pills, things like that. Obviously, the transient people are well aware of this, more so than the average city dweller who has absolutely no idea. In fact, did you know that one of the most important people in the cities was the garbage collector? At nighttime in Rome, for example, it was extremely common for the garbage collectors and the street sweepers to go out after the city wound down and pick up the garbage out of the gutters and the things like that, because that was what they had to do. Otherwise, the garbage would just pile up and the rats would have a feast. And that was one of the issues that was important, because that kept things like diseases like dysentery and other things from becoming a pandemic, and cholera. And of course, unfortunately, it did nothing for smallpox, which was in many cases, or even the bubonic plague, because at the time we didn't have the kind of knowledge to treat the problem at its source as we do today. Bubonic plague is certainly still a potentially real thing. In fact, I think I heard somewhere a couple of months ago that there was a slight outbreak of bubonic plague in the west of the United States. I think it was in Oregon. Very isolated case. So bubonic plague is a real serious thing. It's called the Black Death because of what it does to your body. And it was carried by little fleas that were coming up for rats. Again, remember I told you sewage treatment, has made a lot of our lives easier, but once the systems break down, there's going to be a serious issue of waste management. It's not going to be just a matter of throwing it away in a dumpster. There won't be anybody to empty said dumpster. So the dumpster is going to start to fester, food's going to start to rot, and as well as anything else that's in there that's not food. Paper, plastics, things like that are going to be also problematic as well. So I think people need to make sure that when they're preparing for any kind of survival, that you need to consider the garbage. The garbage has to be dealt with as well as all the more exciting things, weapons and cakes of food and shelter, water, waste has to be dealt with. Now, females, by the way, we have a problem. Because we have two problems, actually. One of them is our menstrual periods, and the second one is the issue of how to pee. Now, guys, you're lucky. You guys got a extensible urine passing device called a penis that allows you to aim and pee where you want, and you don't have to unzip your clothes and everything to do that. But there are some women who have learned to manage to do this. But unfortunately, not all American women know how to do this. So maybe what we need to do is go through and discuss that. Also, clearly, if it's a cold day outside, I'm a snow queen, it's my job, and I deal with the cold a lot, is how do you pee when you have to take off your clothes? I wear a skirt, okay? That makes it easier, because if I have to pee, I can basically just, slay down my underwears and sit and squat and go do what I gotta do. But for the other people, especially women who wear jeans, this is where you are going to have to deal with another issue of pulling your pants down quite a bit, sitting down, or squatting. Anybody who ever uses a squat toilet could tell you how that is. In fact, that's a good exercise. Maybe that's a good thing you should practice, even if you don't have to go, is figuring out is how you're going to manage waste. And this video is getting a lot longer than I wanted to go. So maybe what I'll do is I'm going to break this into a series of little videos to discuss that. Now, how does this tie in with what I do as a North American snow queen? Well, let's talk about the other issue, which is related to waste, and it's definitely a winter issue as well, is keeping warm. Because that's something that everybody has to deal with. It seems that everybody thinks about all the fun part of it, but they don't think about the practical parts, which is that we do need to realize that here in New England, our winters can be, and quite often are, brutal. And if you're up there in the Canadian areas, such as in Toronto or Ontario, Montreal, you're probably a little more familiar with this. Maine, you too. Northern New England, same. Alaska, you better know how to survive in the cold. Because in those areas, it's the elements that can kill you. It may not necessarily be the guy next door who's licking his chops looking at your MREs that you got stacked up in the pantry. But it might be Mother Nature who decides to take you down. Warmth. In an area where you have a plentiful supply of materials like wood, it's not too hard to get wood, but wood takes time to season and dry. You want to really burn dry wood because dry wood is better for preventing creosote. Creosote is a waxy, inflammable product that once it builds up in your chimney enough times, it will cause your, or any kind of flue, it's going to cause it to combust. And if it does that, it's going to start a fire. It is really, really scary to watch. One of the Dirty Jazz Micro went to chimney sweep school, and he showed, the instructor showed how bad a creosote fire can be in the chimney. So obviously if you have a wood stove, there's also the issue of making sure your flue is clean at all times. And if it's a chimney you have never used, but thinking about using it, unless it's a real dire emergency and you have no idea of the condition of that chimney, in fact, anybody who prepares 2012 survival has already probably thought of that. Make sure that the chimney and the wood stove are working properly. Chimneys that are built for gas stoves, gas heaters, really are not going to stand up to a wood fire. The gas is a lower burning temperature than wood, and so the motor and the other products also may be weak enough that it's not going to be airtight. And also we need to consider the practicality of where you live. Now, I have an apartment right now which used to have working chimneys in here. I used to have two, one in my living room and one in my kitchen. One in the kitchen is still used by the boiler in the cellar, but the one in my living room is no longer in service. In fact, the part of it above the roof line is covered over. You can't even use it at all. So clearly, if you've got a major issue of no heat for 2012, somebody is going to be very, very unhappy and very, very cold, and that's where people in desperateness may get careless in trying to find ways to keep warm. Also, while we're on the issue of power, I want to mention briefly because in this day and age, everything is electric. My camera here certainly is. The computers that process the videos are. My stove is electric. My radio is electric. My stereo is electric. So therefore, you're going to want to have a generator. One of the problems that we found out in October, if they're snowstorm Alfred, is just how many people have no understanding of safety of generators. And many people were overcome by carbon monoxide fumes because they were using generators in places such as their cellars of their homes. First of all, that is an extremely dangerous idea. And second of all, unless the generator was properly installed, it was designed for that application, it's a good way to see your house burn down because you're dealing with highly inflammable fuel. So therefore, generators need to be used in accordance with the instructions and local codes. So if you've got a generator, and it's best to follow the codes and the regulations. It's not meant to be a bureaucratic nightmare, and it's meant to save your life. So please do use them. Okay, that's why they're there. Fuel, just like with heating, fuel could be a problem. If you are depending on utilities such as gas company to provide your heat, what happens if the gas company can't provide gas pressure? You're going to basically be without heat. You're going to be freezing. If your generator runs on natural gas, you're going to also be running with no fuel. If your generator runs on propane or your heat runs on propane, you're depending on a deliverable fuel, which may or may not be available, and once the tank runs out, you're screwed. So therefore, just like with weapons, as I mentioned in the earlier video, you really want to consider having multiple choices of energy. Now, solar is great, except the problem with solar panels is they're very expensive per watt. I priced a 175 watt panel, brand new, it was like $500. Now, that's just for 75 watts, which means you get 10 hours charging, that's 750 watts. Now, you might say, how bad is that? Well, it's not, but, 750 watts. That's only going to be, your panel only going to generate 75 watts an hour. And only when the sun is shining. That's no good if you're going to want to use the energy for things like nighttime for lamps. So then you need batteries. Batteries, like lead acids. There's a whole nother kettle of fish right there. Batteries are going to have toxic chemicals in them. If it's what they call a flooded cell battery, i.e. a lead acid battery like in a car, it's going to have to add water. If it's a sealed dry cell type battery, which I don't think there really is any secondary batteries in this category, but I'm going to leave that up for you to figure this out. Because what I'm going to say is this applies to anything. You're going to have to keep those batteries charged. And each kind of battery you choose is going to have different kind of maintenance routines. So, if you choose to use the standard flooded cell battery and it's being charged by your solar panel, you're going to need to check the water level at least, say once a week. Once a month, depending on how much you're using it. And the battery's just quietly sitting there, and the charger is automatically figures when it needs charges, and only charges it when necessary. You probably might have to do less maintenance. If it's the kind of battery charger that the situation where you're using the battery for a lot of charging and discharging, the maintenance goes up exponentially because the battery sulfate and the terminals get that white powdery crud on it. Please don't mess with batteries when wearing cotton clothing. It will eat through it like there's no tomorrow. I have had many dresses like this after working with deep cycle batteries that have gotten so trashed to the point where they basically look like Swiss cheese from the acid. So clearly, it's best to work with batteries using something that's much more durable, and also we're wearing safety goggles because batteries can also spark, they can explode, acid can go flying everywhere, and guess what? You're in trouble. If there's no medical care, you're not going to know how to treat the problem unless you have experience as EMT regarding acid burns. But I can't cover everything. I really can't. I love to, but there's just so many things. I have sat there and said to myself, how can I discuss position 1, 2, 3, 4, but I can barely even figure out how to say the first two in the video. That's supposed to be less than 10 minutes. I discussed weapons in the last segment, and they actually went over 15 minutes long. That's nuts. Seriously, you gotta realize that. Here I'm trying to give you an educated source, but now I gotta deal with another problem. I gotta get these videos out there to YouTube, and the longer videos like these have to be processed differently than the little shorts. The little short one regarding what if high sorcery really worked on Earth, that was pretty short. It was like 6 minutes. That can go straight up to YouTube, no problem. But this one here is going to take a little longer. Same thing with the one with firearms versus swords. The video and this video are going to probably have to be processed in a way that, it takes a lot of hard drive space to store these things. They're that long. And then I have to edit them down. And then I have to upload them. But uploading videos take a while. And that's just the way it is, I suppose. Well, yeah, it's the phone. So, I'll show you later.